What if you could spend the next 2 hours traveling through history without opening a textbook? Tonight, we're going back in time, but not for one story. We're going through dozens. You'll see the strange things ancient humans did to survive, the terrifying moments they faced, the inventions that changed their lives, the wars and disasters that reshaped civilizations, and the bizarre everyday habits that would seem completely insane today. And every episode tells a different story. One moment, you'll be watching humans survive in a world without modern technology. The next, you'll discover why an ancient civilization disappeared. And then we'll jump somewhere completely unexpected, so get comfortable, turn the lights down, and forget about the clock, because for the next 2 hours, you're not watching history, you're living through it.
Imagine waking before sunrise, wrapped in animal hides as the cold air slips into your shelter. Your family is already preparing to move. Hunters sharpen stone points. Children gather close to the fire. Then you notice something impossible. Blood stains your legs, yet no predator attacked you. No sharp rock cut your skin. There is no pain that explains it. Your heart races. You wonder if you are dying. Thousands of years before medicine, books, or even written language, what would an ancient girl think when she experienced her very first period? The answer has been hidden in humanity's oldest story. At first, it seems like an impossible mystery. Modern girls often learn about menstruation long before it happens. Ancient girls had no classrooms, no health guides, and no internet. But they were never truly alone. Human survival depended on sharing knowledge. Every generation watched the one before it. Older women had already faced the same frightening moment. They understood what younger girls could not. That simple truth may have changed everything. Scientists believe girls in prehistoric societies often reached puberty later than many girls today because food was less reliable and daily life demanded enormous physical effort. When the first period finally arrived, it marked more than a biological change. It signaled that childhood was ending. But that was not the strangest part. The real mystery is how women managed something that returned month after month without any modern products. The evidence comes quietly. Organic materials rarely survive for thousands of years, so archaeology cannot uncover ancient pads or cloth with certainty. Instead, researchers study traditional societies, preserved tools, and human behavior. Across different environments, women likely used soft moss, dry grasses, bark fibers, animal fur, or folded pieces of hide to absorb blood. These natural materials were available almost everywhere humans traveled. They were simple, practical, and often reused after careful cleaning. Yet survival was never only about stopping the bleeding. Imagine walking long distances, gathering plants, caring for children, and avoiding dangerous animals while managing a monthly cycle. Clean rivers and streams became more than sources of drinking water. They offered a chance to wash the body whenever possible. Good hygiene reduced irritation and helped prevent infection, even though ancient people understood these benefits through experience rather than science. Their knowledge came from observation, not textbooks. Then another clue appears. Our closest relatives, including chimpanzees, experience reproductive cycles, reminding scientists that menstruation has deep evolutionary roots. Human menstruation is unusual, but it is not a modern invention. It has accompanied countless generations through changing climates, harsh winters, and endless migrations. Every mother who survived passed more than genes to her daughter. She passed experience. That invisible chain may have been humanity's greatest tool. A frightened girl became a confident woman because someone stood beside her. No written instructions were needed. Only trust, memory, and care. The greatest surprise is not that ancient women endured their first period. It is that, in a world filled with hunger, predators, and uncertainty, they found ways to support one another. Quiet moments of guidance, repeated across thousands of generations, helped shape every family that followed. Somewhere in that distant past, one frightened girl looked down in fear, only to discover she was not facing the end of life. She was stepping into the same journey that eventually led to all of us. Before you leave, take one last moment to think about this. Every woman alive today is connected to an unbroken chain stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. Every mother, every daughter, every quiet lesson shared beside a fire helped shape the world we live in today. History isn't just about kings, battles, or lost civilizations. Sometimes the greatest stories are the ones that were never written down. If this documentary changed the way you see our ancestors, make sure to follow this channel because we're uncovering the hidden secrets of ancient human life that most history books never tell. The next story might completely change what you think about survival, evolution, and the incredible journey that made us human. Join us, and let's keep exploring humanity's greatest mysteries together.
Imagine waking up one morning and realizing your entire body is covered in thick, dark fur. Every step feels hotter. Every ray of sunlight burns against your skin not because it's too strong, but because your own fur traps the heat around you. Now imagine trying to chase an animal across miles of open land like that. You wouldn't last very long, but here's the mystery. Every other great ape is still covered in thick hair. Chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, so why did humans become the odd one out? Why did our ancestors give up the one thing that seemed to protect every other mammal on Earth? For a long time, scientists believed they already knew the answer. That the deeper they looked, the stranger the story became. Millions of years ago, our ancestors didn't live on endless grasslands. They spent much of their lives in forests, where trees offered shade, and climbing was just another part of survival. Back then, thick body hair was an advantage. It protected the skin from scratches, insects, and changing weather. It was exactly what you expect from innate. Then the forests slowly began to disappear. Climate shifts transformed huge areas into open woodland and sunlit plains. The world changed, and our ancestors had to change with it. At first, they weren't the fastest hunters, far from it. Lions could sprint faster. Leopards could climb better. Hyenas had stronger jaws. Humans seemed outmatched in almost every way. Yet they possessed one hidden advantage that few animals could match. Not speed, endurance. Instead of chasing prey for seconds, they could keep moving for hours. But there was one massive problem. Running under the African sun, while wrapped in thick fur, was like wearing a heavy winter coat in the middle of summer. The body heated up dangerously fast. And an overheated brain is deadly. Something had to change. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Scientists studying human skin discovered that we aren't actually hairless. Your body still has millions of hair follicles, almost the same number as a chimpanzee. The difference isn't how many hairs we have, it's what those hairs became. Most turned into tiny, soft strands that barely trap heat at all. But losing thick fur only solved half the problem. Without it, our skin faced the full force of the sun, so why didn't our ancestors simply burn? The answer was already hiding inside their skin. As body hair became thinner over thousands of generations, another feature became far more important: sweat. Humans evolved millions of sweat glands across their bodies. When sweat evaporates, it pulls heat away like a natural cooling system. Most mammals rely on panting. Dogs do it. Wolves do it. But panting only works while resting or slowing down. Humans could cool themselves while still running, hour after hour. Researchers believe this ability helped early humans practice what is called persistence hunting. Instead of catching an animal with explosive speed, they simply refused to stop. The prey eventually overheated long before the humans did. It sounds almost unbelievable, yet people in parts of southern Africa have demonstrated this hunting method even in recent history, showing just how powerful endurance can be. But surviving that heat came with a price. Without thick fur, our ancestors became vulnerable in new ways. Cold nights felt colder. Sharp sunlight became more dangerous. Tiny insects reached the skin more easily. Nature had solved one problem, only to create several more, so humans invented new solutions. Animal hides became clothing, caves became shelter. Eventually, fire turned freezing nights into places of comfort. Instead of evolving thicker fur again, humans changed the world around them, and that may be our greatest evolutionary trick of all. The evidence from fossils, genetics, and studies of modern human biology all point toward the same remarkable story. We didn't simply lose our fur, we traded it in exchange for endurance, for bigger journeys, for better hunting, and eventually for civilization itself. So the next time you wipe sweat from your forehead on a hot day, remember this. That tiny drop of water carries the memory of an ancient decision made millions of years ago. A decision that transformed one ordinary ape into us.
25,000 years ago, in the heart of the Ice Age, night was falling over Europe. And if you had been there, you would have been terrified. Snow blankets the land, the wind never stops screaming. And inside a cold, rocky cave, a small family huddles together, watching their fire die down to a few weak embers. Nobody sleeps deeply tonight, because outside in that darkness the night belongs to something else. Cave lions bigger than anything alive today. Cave hyenas with jaws strong enough to crush bone. Packs of wolves that can smell blood from miles away. And humans. Humans have nothing. No claws. No fangs. No fur. No night vision. On paper, we shouldn't have survived a single one of those nights. But here's the part almost nobody tells you: caves were never really ours. Archaeological evidence shows something disturbing. Humans and predators took turns living in the exact same caves. 1 century a family sheltered there. The next a pack of hyenas moved in. The ownership just changed, back and forth, for thousands of years. So how did a soft, clawless, furless species survive night after night for hundreds of thousands of years without becoming dinner? The answer wasn't strength. It was something far more dangerous to every predator on Earth: intelligence. And archaeology is only now uncovering exactly how it worked. The first secret was fire, but not the way you'd think. A fire built deep inside a cave fills it with smoke. Smoke doesn't just choke you, it kills you in your sleep. So early humans made a calculated choice. They slept near the cave entrance, close enough to stay warm, far enough for the smoke to escape. That same fire also lit up the entrance, meaning nothing could approach without being seen first. When wood ran out on the frozen steppe, they burned bone. They burned fat, anything that would keep the flame alive. Then came something even smarter: the stone lamp. A small stone bowl filled with animal fat with a wick of moss. Tiny flame. Barely any smoke. No need to keep a massive fire roaring all night. Just enough light for a mother to check on her sleeping child or a hunter to find a tool in the dark. The second secret was the bed itself. At Border Cave in South Africa, archaeologists found something that shouldn't exist: that early actual engineered bedding. First a layer of ash to stop insects from crawling up. Then fresh grass. Then aromatic plants that naturally repelled mosquitoes. Long before mattresses, long before houses, humans were already designing a safer place to close their eyes. But the most important defense wasn't fire or beds. It was each other. Ancient people never slept alone. They slept in a tight cluster, and it wasn't just for warmth. It was architecture. Children slept in the center, the safest point. Strong adults formed a human wall around them. If danger came, it hit the adults first. And this closeness wasn't only about defense. Anthropologists believe pair-bonding couples staying physically close night after night played a real role in Ice Age survival too. Shared body heat kept partners alive through sub-zero nights, but it also reinforced something: biological loyalty, attachment, the drive to protect the person next to you. Some researchers argue this nightly closeness is one reason humans evolved long-term pair bonds at all, unlike most other mammals. Intimacy, in other words, wasn't separate from survival. It was part of the strategy. Couples who stayed close, who trusted each other completely in the dark, were more likely to wake up in the morning together. And then there's the detail that sounds almost too perfect to be real: nature had already built them a night watch for free. Older adults naturally wake earlier, younger adults stay up later. Children wake at random. Nobody's biological clock matches. Which means statistically someone in that cave is almost always awake. Someone hears the branch snap outside. Someone notices the fire dying. The whole tribe becomes one living alarm system without a single person ever pulling guard duty. Even the camp layout was a trap avoidance system. Fresh meat, blood, bones, all kept far from the sleeping area, because that scent is exactly what drags predators in. And some researchers believe the ancestors of modern dogs were already sleeping by that. Fire too, their noses catching danger long before any human could. Here's where it gets stranger. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham believes fire didn't just keep us alive, it may have built the human brain. Cooked food digests easier, freeing up huge amounts of energy for the brain. Homo erectus's brain exploded in size around 2 million years ago. Coincidence? Maybe not, except solid evidence of controlled fire only appears 250,000 years ago, long after those bigger brains show up. So, maybe it wasn't fire, maybe it was meat, or maybe somehow both. And sleep itself. You've probably heard 8 unbroken hours is normal. History disagrees. For centuries, people slept in 2 shifts: a first sleep, quiet time by the fire, then a second sleep. Even earlier than that, studies on the Hadza of Tanzania, one of the last hunter-gatherer societies on Earth, show they sleep just over 6 hours, wake up constantly, and still stay healthy. Because their sleep isn't ruled by a clock. It's ruled by what their body actually needs. Now look at Earth from space tonight. Cities glowing. Darkness almost gone. For the first time in human history, night isn't really dark anymore. But our bodies. They were built for that Ice Age cave, not for this.
Imagine waking up 170,000 years ago. The wind cuts through your skin, every breath burns. Around you, the world is wild, giant predators roam the darkness, and survival depends on every decision you make. You look down at the rough animal hide wrapped around your body. It feels obvious why you're wearing it, to stay warm. After all, that's what we've all been told. Humans invented clothes because they were cold. But what if that story isn't entirely true? What if one of the most familiar ideas in human history leaves out the most important part? Because the deeper scientists looked into the origins of clothing, the stranger the story became. Here's the first mystery. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived without tailored clothing. They survived changing climates, dangerous animals, and harsh environments long before stitched garments appeared. If cold alone forced humans to wear clothes, why didn't they invent them much earlier? Making clothing was incredibly difficult. Every animal hide had to be cleaned, scraped, softened, and stitched together using bone tools. It demanded time, skill, and precious energy. Ancient humans would never choose that burden without a powerful reason. But that wasn't the strangest discovery. Scientists searching for answers didn't begin with caves or ancient skeletons. Instead, they studied something almost invisible, a tiny parasite, the human body louse. Unlike head lice, body lice can't survive on bare skin. They live inside clothing and depend on people wearing garments. By comparing the DNA of head lice and body lice, researchers discovered that the two separated roughly 170,000 years ago. That means humans were almost certainly wearing some form of clothing by then, but here's where the mystery deepens. The lice can tell us when clothing existed, they can't tell us why. And that's where everything changes. By the time humans begin leaving Africa, they were entering landscapes unlike anything their ancestors had known. Freezing winds, icy mountains, dense forests, sharp rocks, and unfamiliar insects turned every journey into a fight for survival. Clothing wasn't simply about comfort anymore. It became protection against freezing temperatures, against cuts and scratches, against biting insects, against the unknown. Instead of solving one problem, clothing solved many at once. That's why there's probably no single moment when humans suddenly invented clothes. It was a gradual adaptation, shaped by migration, changing climates, new environments, and countless generations learning through survival. In other words, the question was never, were humans cold? Of course they were. The real question is why clothing became essential only after humans began pushing beyond the world they had always known. And that answer is far more complex than a simple winter coat. Today, putting on a shirt takes only a few seconds. We rarely think about it. But every zipper, every sleeve, and every jacket traces its history back to people who were solving one of the greatest survival challenges our species had ever faced. Clothing didn't just help humans survive the Ice Age, it helped us cross continents, adapt to impossible environments, and eventually settle nearly every corner of Earth. So maybe everything you know about why humans wear clothes isn't completely wrong. It's just incomplete, and sometimes ... The missing part of the story changes everything. History is full of stories that seem obvious, until science uncovers something completely unexpected. If this changed the way you think about something as ordinary as clothing, You'll love what's coming next. Every week, we explore the hidden truths behind ancient humans, survival, evolution, and the mysteries that shaped our world. So if you're curious about the past and want to discover the stories most people never hear, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. You never know. The next video might completely change the way you see human history all over again.
Imagine standing beneath an Ice Age sky, 30,000 years ago. Smoke curls above a distant valley where one tribe gathers around fire. Beyond mountains, forests, rivers, and glaciers, another tribe does the same. Nearly 1,000 miles separate them, yet their spear points, carvings, necklaces, and rituals seem strangely familiar. No letters. No roads. No maps. Not even a written word. So how could ideas travel farther than any person ever walked? Archaeologists uncovered matching symbols across continents. Historians argued for decades, proposing coincidence, migration, imitation, or sheer luck. Every explanation solved one mystery while creating another. Each discovery whispered that something invisible connected distant people. Knowledge survived impossible journeys. Traditions crossed frozen frontiers. Innovation echoed through generations. But who carried the message? Who remembered every detail? Who ensured nothing vanished forever? Perhaps the greatest invention of ancient humanity was never carved into stone. What if ancient humans had already built a communication network, one we almost completely forgot? Somewhere between distant campfires and unfamiliar horizons, invisible chains of memory stretched farther than any river. Every meeting, every shared hunt, every exchanged gift may have carried more than survival. It may have carried civilization's earliest conversation. Life during the Ice Age was a constant negotiation with death. Every journey invited danger. Hungry wolves, cave lions, and enormous bears stalked the same valleys people crossed. Blizzards erased footprints within minutes, while freezing winds turned exposed skin numb. Food could disappear for weeks, forcing families to gamble everything on unfamiliar landscapes. Beyond each ridge waited strangers whose intentions were unknown. Some became allies, others defended their territory without hesitation. In such a world, even surviving tomorrow felt uncertain. The idea of sharing information across hundreds of miles seems almost impossible. Yet the Earth keeps revealing a baffling contradiction. Archaeologists repeatedly uncover remarkably similar stone tools, hunting techniques, ornaments, and craftsmanship scattered across vast distances. These discoveries refuse to fit the simple story of isolated tribes. Somehow, ideas traveled where people rarely could. Someone carried skills. Someone preserved memories. Or perhaps an unseen network quietly connected humanity from beginning. Long before words were carved into stone, the human body became humanity's first language. A raised hand could signal danger. A pointed finger could reveal hidden prey. One fearful glance warned others to stay back, while a confident nod invited trust. Around ancient campfires, survival often depended on movements rather than voices. Hunters rehearsed their plans through demonstrations, silently acting out every step before sunrise. Young children learned by imitation, copying skilled hands until knowledge became instinct. Even rhythm played its part, with synchronized footsteps and shared movements helping groups work together without confusion. These silent signals crossed differences in spoken language, allowing strangers to understand the most important messages almost instantly. Fear, hope, caution, and cooperation needed no translation. But there was one problem no gesture could solve. A hand signal vanished the moment it was made. Gestures could unite people standing together, but gestures couldn't cross a continent, so what carried information farther? Stories became humanity's first libraries long before shelves existed. Around every fire, elders carried centuries inside memory alone. They recited family histories, repeated victories and tragedies, ensuring no lesson disappeared. Songs hid survival knowledge within memorable rhythms, teaching children where water flowed when seasons changed. Myths transformed mountains, rivers, and dangerous valleys into unforgettable landmarks, guiding future travelers without maps. Rituals quietly preserved practical skills, from preparing food safely to tracking migrating herds. Every performance strengthened the message, and every child who learned it became another living copy. Generation after generation, knowledge walked farther than any single person could. Stories crossed lifetimes with remarkable accuracy, carrying wisdom beyond the reach of memory's original keeper. They connected people separated by decades and landscapes, preserving identities against time itself. Yet one mystery remained. Stories alone couldn't explain identical stone tools found thousands of miles apart. Who carried the ideas between distant tribes? The greatest messengers in human history never knew they held that title. They were hunters following migrating herds beyond familiar valleys. They were families searching for safer lands after harsh winters. They were daughters and sons joining distant tribes through marriage, traders exchanging rare stone for shells, and seasonal visitors returning with stories from places few had ever seen. None of them carried books or written messages. Instead, they carried something far more valuable. A better way to shape a spear point. A new hunting technique. Unfamiliar words that slowly blended into another language. Myths from distant firesides. Warnings about dangerous rivers, fierce predators, or changing climates. Every meeting became an exchange far richer than food or tools. One traveler shared an idea with one tribe. Years later, someone from that tribe passed it to another. Generation after generation, knowledge moved like a relay, traveling farther than any individual ever could. Long before written history, humanity had already discovered that the fastest way to move information was not through objects, but through people themselves. The greatest messengers in human history never knew they held that title. They were hunters following migrating herds beyond familiar valleys. They were families searching for safer lands after harsh winters. They were daughters and sons joining distant tribes through marriage, traders exchanging rare stone for shells, and seasonal visitors returning with stories from places few had ever seen. None of them carried books or written messages. Instead, they carried something far more valuable. A better way to shape a spear point. A new hunting technique. Unfamiliar words that slowly blended into another language. Myths from distant firesides. Warnings about dangerous rivers, fierce predators, or changing climates. Every meeting became an exchange far richer than food or tools. One traveler shared an idea with one tribe. Years later, then archaeologists uncovered something even more astonishing. Sharp black obsidian from distant volcanic regions appeared hundreds of miles from its source. Delicate seashells rested deep inland, far from any coastline. Rare stones crossed entire regions, while colorful mineral pigments surfaced in caves separated by vast wilderness. These discoveries weren't accidents. They were clues. Every object had traveled through countless hands before reaching its final destination. And whenever people gathered to exchange valuable materials, they rarely traded only objects. They traded ideas. A hunter demonstrated a stronger spear design. A traveler described unfamiliar animals beyond the mountains. Another shared a safer route through dangerous valleys or a better way to survive brutal winters. Information became as valuable as anything carried in a pouch. Each meeting strengthened connections between communities that might never meet again. Slowly, an extraordinary picture emerged. Ancient landscapes weren't empty frontiers dividing isolated tribes. They were linked by invisible highways of movement, trust, and exchange. Long before roads or kingdoms existed, humanity had already woven together a hidden network that quietly carried both treasures and knowledge across astonishing distances. Not every message needed a voice. Some were carved into stone, painted across cave walls, or etched into tools that survived long after their makers were gone. Handprints, geometric patterns, strings of beads, and carefully decorated weapons appeared again and again across prehistoric landscapes. They were not full writing systems, yet they spoke in ways almost anyone could understand. Certain marks warned of danger. Others honored powerful animals, claimed territory, marked changing seasons, or expressed shared spiritual beliefs. A stranger might not understand another tribe's language, but these symbols often needed no translation. They created a common visual vocabulary that outlived generations and crossed cultural boundaries. Even after spoken words faded into silence, the symbols remained, waiting for new eyes to understand them. Then archaeologists noticed something impossible. Similar patterns kept appearing in caves and settlements separated by thousands of miles. Coincidence seemed increasingly unlikely. If these people had never met, why were they leaving behind such remarkably familiar symbols? With every new excavation, the mystery deepened. In distant regions that had no obvious connection, archaeologists uncovered remarkably similar hunting weapons, nearly identical blade-making techniques, matching ornaments, and artistic styles that echoed across landscapes separated by immense distances. Each discovery challenged the belief that ancient communities lived entirely isolated lives. Scientists searched for answers. Were these similarities nothing more than coincidence? Could different groups have invented the same ideas independently? Or had knowledge quietly traveled from tribe to tribe, spreading so gradually that its path disappeared beneath thousands of years of history? The debate continues, but the evidence has become increasingly difficult to ignore. Every familiar tool, every repeated pattern, every shared innovation adds another piece to an invisible puzzle. By now, the clues begin fitting together. Silent gestures, living stories, wandering travelers, ancient trade routes, and enduring symbols no longer seem like separate discoveries. They appear to be fragments of something much larger. Something capable of carrying ideas across an entire world without a single written word. The answer was hiding in plain sight all along. Ancient humans never needed one extraordinary traveler to carry a message across 1,000 miles. Information moved the way a flame spreads from one torch to the next. One tribe taught a neighboring group how to shape a stronger blade. Months, years, or even decades later, that knowledge reached another community through trade, marriage, seasonal migration, or shared hunts. Each group added a small piece before passing it onward. No single person witnessed the entire journey, yet the idea kept moving. In many ways, it resembles how information travels across the modern internet. A message doesn't always follow one direct route. Instead, it passes through countless connections before reaching its destination. Ancient humanity built something remarkably similar, not with wires or satellites, but with relationships. Every encounter became another link in an invisible chain stretching across continents. That network had no ruler, no capital, and no written records. It was decentralized, flexible, and incredibly resilient. If one path disappeared, another eventually formed. Knowledge survived because it lived inside people instead of stone. Suddenly, the scattered clues made perfect sense. Matching tools, shared symbols, familiar traditions, and distant innovations were not isolated coincidences. They were evidence of humanity's first communication network, one powerful enough to connect strangers across generations and unimaginable distances. Everything we believed about prehistoric isolation had to be rewritten. Long before coins, kingdoms, or fortunes, the greatest treasure a person could possess was knowledge. A single lesson could mean the difference between life and death. Knowing where herds migrated could feed an entire community through a brutal season. Understanding how to build a stronger spear increased the odds of a successful hunt. Recognizing medicinal plants could save a wounded child, while discovering a better way to start a fire might keep an entire family alive through freezing nights. Even warnings carried enormous value. A dangerous valley, an aggressive rival tribe, or a river that flooded without warning were all pieces of information worth more than any precious stone. This invisible exchange of ideas transformed humanity. Every shared discovery gave another community a better chance to survive, adapt, and thrive. Instead of starting from nothing, each generation inherited the hard-earned wisdom of countless people before them. That quiet network of shared knowledge became the engine behind human expansion, allowing our ancestors to spread into new environments with remarkable confidence. Civilization did not begin with wealth. It began with information freely passed from one mind to another. Although thousands of years separate us from those ancient campfires, the instinct that shaped their world still shapes ours today. We teach our children through stories long before they can read. We pass traditions from one generation to the next. We travel, trade, exchange ideas, and use symbols that communicate instantly across cultures and languages. The tools have changed, but the purpose remains remarkably familiar. Smartphones replaced campfires. Satellites replaced wandering travelers. Digital messages replaced spoken tales. Yet every innovation follows the same timeless pattern, one person sharing knowledge with another. Our ancestors understood something we still depend on every day. Information grows stronger when it is shared. Every conversation, every lesson, and every discovery becomes another link in a chain stretching through countless generations. Perhaps that is the most astonishing realization of all. So many inventions we proudly call modern may simply be ancient human instincts wearing new technology. The network evolved beyond recognition, but its foundation was laid tens of thousands of years ago, when memory became humanity's greatest bridge across distance. The mystery that began with two distant tribes no longer feels impossible. Those ancient people were never isolated cave dwellers wandering through history without purpose. They were participants in something extraordinary, a vast human network woven together by trust, memory, movement, and cooperation. Every story remembered, every symbol carved, every traveler welcomed, and every lesson shared strengthened invisible connections stretching far beyond any single lifetime. They proved that the greatest distances could be crossed without roads, maps, or written words, because knowledge lived inside people willing to pass it on. Long before ink touched paper, before kingdoms rose, before empires expanded, and before the first alphabet was ever imagined, humanity had already mastered its greatest technology, preserving knowledge by carrying it from one mind to another. Across mountains. Across rivers. Across generations. Across thousands of miles. Perhaps that is history's most overlooked achievement. The first global network was never built from cables, towers, or satellites. It was built from ordinary people who understood that survival depended not only on strength, but on sharing what they knew. And because they did, their voices still echo through us today.
If you had to pick one way to be tortured, which one would you choose? Yeah, I know. Nobody wants to answer that. And honestly, that's the right call. But just in case you were curious, I've put together history's 10 most brutal torture methods ever recorded. That this is my personal ranking. From least worst, you'll wish you never watched this. Fair warning, by the time we hit number 1, you might regret clicking play. Let's get into it, because trust me, it only gets worse from here. 10. The breaking wheel looks like an oversized wooden wagon wheel. Sounds almost harmless, right? It's not. Not even close, originating in ancient Greece. The breaking wheel, also known as the Catherine wheel, was built for exactly one purpose, public. Execution through torture. The method was brutally simple. Tie the victim's hands and feet to them. Well, then systematically break every limb, one by one, until they were beaten nearly to death. After that, they'd be hoisted onto a stake and left to die, usually within hours. But that wasn't the only version. Some victims were strapped to the outside of the wheel and rolled down a hill. Others were swung over open flame, taking on burn after burn until the wheel itself caught fire, burning them alive, grim-stark. And we're just getting warmed up. 9. The Spanish tickler pitcher Wolverine's claws, or Freddy Krueger's glove, now swap the metal for something even less forgiving. The Spanish tickler was a set of long, sharp iron claws. Dragged slowly and methodically across a victim's entire body, sometimes deep enough to hit bone. If the blood loss didn't kill them, the infection that followed almost certainly would. Historians actually debate whether this device was ever truly used for torture, or if it's more myth than fact. Either way, compared to what's coming, this one's practically tame. Tame is a relative term here, though, because number 8 takes things somewhere far darker. 8. Bamboo torture, say the name out loud. What comes to mind? Getting beaten with bamboo rods? Bamboo splinters under the fingernails? Nope. It's worse, much worse. This method involved tying a victim directly over freshly planted bamboo shoots. Right before they were about to sprout. Bamboo grows unbelievably fast, up to 36 inches in just 24 hours, and as it grew, it would pierce straight through the victims' bodies in the most efficient version. Victims were positioned over multiple shoots angled to puncture vital organs like the heart and lungs. Most didn't survive past a single day. The worst part? Feeling it happen slowly, in real time. A fight between you and nature that you were never going to win. Things are about to get even more savage. 7. Blood Eagle consider yourself warned. This one's brutal. The Blood Eagle was an ancient Viking torture method with one horrifying goal: rip the victim's ribs and lungs out through their back to full. In the shape of a pair of wings that it started with the victim bound and laid face down. A Viking would then cut into the back with a blade or axe with enough force to actually snap the ribs. Those ribs were then pulled outward, spread like wings. And the final, most gruesome step? The lungs were removed and draped over the exposed ribs to complete the look. By the time that was finished, the victim was long dead, and often the body was displayed on a stake as a warning. Vikings did not mess around. If you thought that was as bad as it gets, buckle up. 6 of flaying a liver, this one's most straightforward, but it deserves its place on this list. Flaying alive was practiced across the world, but let's focus on how it was done in medieval Europe. Before the actual flaying began, the victim was softened up, either left in the sun until badly sunburned, or boiled alive. Also, the torturer could make cleaner, more precise incisions. The process usually started with a long cut down the thigh. In more extreme cases, torturers began with the face, the most painful spot. Given how many nerve endings control facial expression, once the cuts were made, the knives were set aside, and the torturer began peeling the skin off by hand, tearing it away from the muscle and nerves. Underneath, here's the horrifying part. This rarely killed the victim outright. A skilled torturer could keep someone alive for days afterward. Death eventually came from blood loss, infection, or hypothermia. The body left with no skin to regulate its own temperature. Number 5 trades physical agony for something that breaks the mind just as effectively. 5 of Chinese water torture are probably the most well-known method on this entire list. Even Mythbusters took a crack at testing it. The setup: the victim lies on their back, completely restrained, hands, feet, and head. Often blindfolded or kept in total darkness to maximize sensory deprivation. Directly above their forehead sits a bucket of ice-cold water, with a hole just small enough that drops fall at irregular intervals. Sounds almost gentle. It's not. This method is compounding. It gets exponentially worse the longer it continues. Most people only talk about the psychological toll, which is very real and can cause total loss of sanity. But there's a physical side too. Each drop slowly erodes the skin. A blister forms, then grows, and eventually every drop becomes genuinely excruciating. That combine the physical pain with the mental deterioration, and you get one of the most quietly devastating methods on this list. For more to go, and we're about to get a short breather before things get dark again. For White Room Tortureke, quick palate cleanser, because this video has gotten heavy. Back to it. White Room torture is the only purely psychological method on this list. But don't let the lack of physical pain fool you. It's absolutely brutal. This one's seen far more use in modern times, typically by governments trying to extract information. A single bright white light, always on. White clothing. White food. A single bright white light, always on. White clothing. White food. Nothing but total sensory deprivation. No color, no sound, no stimulation of any kind. Just you and your own thoughts. Within just a few days, this extreme isolation can cause severe psychological damage, depression, anxiety, hallucinations, even loss of consciousness. Survivors who've experienced it firsthand consistently say the same thing. Those who go in are never quite the same, if they make it out at all. And if it's doing a lot of work in that sentence, many victims attempted to take their own lives just to end the torment. Now back to the physical stuff, and it's about to get genuinely disgusting. 3. The Swedish drink list might be the single grossest entry on the entire list. It dates back to the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648 in Europe, used by Swedish mercenaries, usually against German villages during raids, as a way to force people to reveal where valuables were hidden. So what exactly was the drink? A crude mixture of human or animal feces and urine, mixed together in a bucket. A literal poop smoothie. Victims were held down and force-fed this concoction. And if the mercenaries were feeling especially cruel, they'd wait until the victim's stomach bloated from the mixture, then apply pressure, either by poking it with a stick or walking across boards laid on their abdomens. It might not sound as physically devastating as some other entries, but the sheer grossness alone earns it a solid number 3. Numbers 2 and 1 both involve water, and one of them genuinely still creeps me out. 2. Keel hauling. Being a pirate wasn't nearly as fun as the movies make it look. Keel hauling used the keel, the very bottom of a ship, as the torture device itself. The victim's hands or feet were tied to a rope, and they were thrown overboard, then dragged underneath the hull from one side to the other, or about astern. You might think, just hold your breath and you'll be fine. Nope. Ocean currents are brutal, and the forces underneath a moving ship are strong enough to slam a victim against the hull hard enough to kill them outright. And if the blunt trauma or drowning somehow didn't finish the job, there was still the hull itself, coated in razor-sharp barnacles that would shred the victim's body as they were dragged across it. Water, drowning, blunt trauma, sharp objects. This method has it all. Personally, I hate the ocean, which is exactly why this one lands at number 2 for me now. The one I consider the single worst torture method in recorded history. 1. Scaffers in the boats, in my opinion. Nothing on this list comes close to this as a CAFISM, sometimes called being eaten alive, had a few historical variations, including a barrel method and a boat method. We're focusing on the boats. The small boats were nailed together to form a kind of floating coffin. The victim was sealed inside, face exposed, arms and legs left hanging outside the boat. So far, uncomfortable, but not unbearable. That changes fast. The victim was then force-fed massive amounts of milk and honey, which was also smeared over their exposed limbs. The honey attracted insects, and the forced feeding caused severe diarrhea, which built up inside the boat, drawing in even more pests, including rats. Feedings continued regularly, but the victim was left completely helpless and exposed the entire time, to insects, to rodents, to everything the mixture attracted. Slowly, they'd begin to be eaten alive, layer by layer. The worst part, to me, is the sheer duration. The human body can survive like this, being fed, being eaten, for an extended period. The longest documented case reportedly lasted 17 days. 17 days lying in your own waste, slowly consumed by insects, developing infection after infection, before finally succumbing to one of the most gruesome deaths imaginable. That's my personal ranking, and if you disagree, I genuinely want to hear it. Drop a comment with which one you think deserves the top spot, and if you've got a minute, rank all 10 in your own order in the comments below. I'm curious how different everyone's list looks. Next video is going to be a lot lighter. I promise. This one got dark fast, and if this is your first time here on the channel, so if you enjoyed it, consider subscribing. See you in the next one.
Imagine walking across an ancient valley 40,000 years ago. You are not alone. Smoke rises from another camp beyond the hills. Their children laugh. Their hunters sharpen stone tools. They look almost human, yet something feels different. They are not your tribe. They are another kind of human. For thousands of years, many human species shared this planet together. Then, almost without warning, every one of them vanished. Every campfire went dark. Every voice disappeared. Only one remained. Ours. The question is simple, but the answer may completely change how you see yourself. It is easy to imagine history as a straight path leading directly to us. The truth is far stranger. Our family tree once looked more like a tangled forest. Neanderthals survived freezing Europe. Denisovans spread across mysterious landscapes in Asia. Homo floresiensis lived on isolated islands. Other human relatives appeared and disappeared before leaving only tiny clues buried beneath ancient soil. Somehow, despite sharing the same dangerous world, every branch broke except one. Why? At first, scientists believed survival belonged to the strongest. Neanderthals were powerful hunters with bodies built for brutal winters. They crafted tools, controlled fire, and cared for injured family members. They were far from primitive monsters. In many ways, they were remarkably capable people. That raised an uncomfortable question. If they were so successful, why are they gone while we are still here? The answer did not come from a single fossil. It emerged slowly from caves, ancient campsites, and even microscopic traces locked inside bones. Researchers discovered something unexpected. Modern humans were not simply competing with other species. Sometimes they lived beside them. Sometimes they traded. Sometimes they even had children together. Tiny pieces of Neanderthal DNA still survive inside millions of people today. They disappeared as a separate species, but part of them continues living within us. But that was not the biggest surprise. Around 70,000 years ago, modern humans began changing in ways that were almost invisible. Their tools became more varied. Art appeared on cave walls. Jewelry, music, and symbolic objects spread across different regions. These were not just decorations. They revealed something powerful. Ideas could now travel farther than people. Knowledge no longer disappeared with one generation. It could grow, improve, and spread faster than ever before. That changed everything. Imagine facing a deadly winter. One group learns a better hunting method. Another discovers warmer clothing. A distant tribe invents stronger spear points. Instead of keeping those discoveries trapped in one place, modern humans shared them through growing social networks. Every new idea became a gift passed forward. Survival stopped depending on one person's strength. It depended on thousands of minds working across countless generations. Yet nature was still ruthless. Climate shifted again and again. Forests became grasslands. Rivers dried before returning centuries later. Animals disappeared from familiar hunting grounds. Every environmental change tested every human species. Those unable to adapt quickly faced impossible choices. Move, change, or vanish. Flexibility became more valuable than muscle. Scientists also found evidence that our ancestors traveled astonishing distances. Shells from distant coastlines appeared hundreds of miles inland. Rare stones crossed mountains through exchange networks. These connections meant food, tools, and information could flow between communities even during desperate times. Isolation became dangerous. Cooperation became a survival strategy unlike anything evolution had seen before. Still, no single discovery solves the mystery completely. Disease, competition, smaller populations, and simple bad luck probably pushed other human groups closer to extinction. Once numbers dropped too low, recovery became nearly impossible. Every harsh winter mattered more. Every lost child carried greater consequences. Gradually, one population after another faded from the landscape until silence replaced their voices forever. Today, when you look into a mirror, you are seeing the final survivor of an extraordinary family. Not because our ancestors were perfect. Not because they were invincible. They survived because they adapted, shared, learned, and connected in ways that changed the rules of survival itself. Somewhere beneath every city, every language, and every invention echoes the memory of those forgotten relatives. They are gone, but their story did not end. It became ours. You are living proof of the greatest survival story ever told. And this is only one chapter. There are countless forgotten mysteries of ancient humans, lost civilizations, and unbelievable discoveries that history still hides. So if you don't want to miss the next journey into our forgotten past, subscribe now. Because the next story might completely change the way you see the world.
Imagine waking up one morning, not to the sound of an alarm, but to complete silence. No cities, no houses, no hospitals, no police, no one coming to save you. Just you and a world that wanted you dead. One wrong step, one hidden predator, one unexpected storm, and your entire bloodline could disappear before sunset. Today, when we think about danger, we imagine wars, diseases, or car accidents. But for almost all of human history, simply surviving one single day was the greatest challenge imaginable. And among the thousands of days our ancestors lived, there may have been one kind of day that was more terrifying than all the others. A day when nature itself declared war on humanity. So, what was the most dangerous day an ancient human could ever experience? To answer that, we have to go back about 70,000 years. Picture East Africa, the place where modern humans first evolved. Forget the green forests you see in documentaries. Much of the landscape was unpredictable. Open grasslands stretched for miles. Rocky hills hid unseen predators. Water sources appeared and disappeared without warning. Every single morning started with one question. Not, what should we do today? But, will we still be alive tonight? Because unlike today, humans weren't the strongest animals. Not even close. We didn't have claws. We didn't have sharp teeth. We couldn't outrun most predators. We couldn't smell danger from miles away. In almost every physical category, we lost. So why didn't we go extinct? Because humans had something far more dangerous than claws. A brain. That never stopped solving problems. But even intelligence had limits, because every once in a while, our ancestors faced something that no amount of intelligence could stop. Imagine you're part of a small tribe, maybe 20 people, your family, your children, everything you have. You've spent days following animal tracks across the plains. Food is running out. The river you've depended on for weeks has almost dried up. Finally, someone spots dark clouds gathering in the distance. Rain. Everyone celebrates. Rain means water. Rain means plants. Rain means animals returning. Rain means survival. But sometimes, those clouds brought something else, something far worse. Today, if heavy rain falls, we stay inside. Our houses protect us. Weather forecasts warn us days in advance. Ancient humans had none of that. A peaceful valley could become a deadly river within minutes. Flash floods are one of nature's fastest killers. Even today, they can sweep away cars weighing over a ton. Now imagine standing barefoot, holding a wooden spear with a child in your arms. No bridges, no rescue teams, no warning. Archaeologists have discovered ancient campsites buried beneath thick layers of mud and rock. Evidence suggests entire groups were sometimes caught by sudden floods, leaving behind tools, fire pits, and unfinished meals, frozen in time. Nature didn't just interrupt their lives, it erased them. But believe it or not, the flood wasn't the worst part, because the moment the rain stopped, the real nightmare began. The smell of wet earth spread across the landscape. Fresh grass started growing. Animals returned. But humans weren't the only ones following that scent. Every predator for miles was doing exactly the same thing. Lions, hyenas, leopards, gigantic crocodiles waiting beside rivers, even packs of wild dogs, working together with deadly precision. To us, the rain meant hope. To them, it meant dinner. Scientists studying modern predators in Africa have noticed something fascinating. Large carnivores become far more active after rainfall. Prey animals gather near fresh water, and predators know exactly where they'll be. Now, imagine you're an ancient human, weak, hungry, exhausted, walking toward the only water source for miles, completely unaware that something else is watching you from the tall grass. Not because it hates you, not because it's angry, simply because you're the easiest meal available. And this is where many people misunderstand ancient life. People imagine humans sitting around campfires every night, comfortably eating roasted meat. The reality was far less romantic. For most of history, humans weren't always the hunters. Many times, we were the hunted. Then, as if predators weren't enough, the sky itself could suddenly become your enemy. Lightning storms, massive wildfires, trees exploding from direct strikes, smoke filling the air, animals running in every direction. Imagine standing in the middle of an open plain when lightning hits dry grass just a few hundred meters away. Within minutes, walls of fire begin racing across the landscape. You can't outrun it. You can't extinguish it. You don't even know which direction is safe. Your only choice is to run.
But surviving the fire didn't mean you were safe, because once the flames disappeared, they left behind something even worse. Silence. No birds, no animals, no edible plants, just miles of black ash. To us, a burned forest looks tragic. To ancient humans, it looked like starvation. Every berry bush was gone. Every small animal had either escaped or died. And if your tribe couldn't find food quickly, the fire might not kill you. Hunger would. Then came another problem. Injuries. Today, twist your ankle and you'll probably be back on your feet in a few weeks. 70,000 years ago, a broken leg could be a death sentence. You couldn't hunt. You couldn't keep up with the tribe. And the tribe faced an impossible choice. Slow down for one injured person, or risk everyone starving. Archaeologists have discovered ancient skeletons with healed broken bones. That tells us something remarkable. Sometimes people stayed behind. Sometimes someone carried them. Sometimes human compassion became stronger than survival itself. And maybe that's one of the biggest reasons we're still here today. But compassion couldn't stop disease. After heavy rains, standing water became the perfect breeding ground for insects. Parasites spread. Contaminated water caused deadly infections. A tiny cut, barely noticeable, could become infected within days. There were no antibiotics, no disinfectants, no hospitals. Your own immune system was the only doctor you had, and it didn't always win. Then, night arrived. Most people today think darkness is peaceful. Ancient humans didn't, because darkness belonged to predators. Your vision disappeared, but theirs didn't. Lions hunted. Hyenas laughed in the distance. Leopards climbed silently through trees. Even crocodiles became harder to spot beside rivers. Every strange sound outside the camp could be your last warning. Imagine trying to sleep, knowing something might already be watching you from just beyond the firelight. For thousands of generations, humans didn't sleep because they felt safe. They slept because exhaustion eventually defeated fear. And sometimes, nature delivered something even more terrifying. Volcanoes. Scientists believe massive eruptions dramatically changed Earth's climate more than once during human evolution. Ash blocked sunlight. Temperatures dropped. Plants disappeared. Animals migrated. Entire regions became nearly impossible to survive. Imagine waking up to a sky that's no longer blue, the sun hidden behind ash, the air difficult to breathe, food disappearing week after week, not for one day, not for 1 month, but for years. For ancient humans, this wasn't just bad weather. It was the collapse of their entire world. So, what really was the most dangerous day in ancient human life? It wasn't simply the day they faced a lion, or a flood, or a wildfire. It was the day when everything happened at once. The river flooded, the fire spread, the prey disappeared, predators moved closer, someone got injured, food ran out, and night was still coming. That was the day that decided whether an entire tribe would survive or disappear forever. The incredible part is, this happened again and again for tens of thousands of years. Yet somehow, humans endured. Not because we were the fastest, not because we were the strongest, but because we learned something no other species mastered quite the same way. We shared food, we warned each other about danger, we planned ahead, we built stronger shelters, we controlled fire, we taught our children. Every disaster forced us to become smarter. Every near extinction made us more resilient. In a strange way, the most dangerous days in human history didn't destroy humanity. They created it. So the next time a storm ruins your plans, or the power goes out for a few hours, remember this. Your worst day would probably have been considered an easy day 70,000 years ago, because every sunrise back then wasn't the beginning of another ordinary day. It was another chance to survive. And sometimes that was the greatest victory of all.